Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second show for this year, the Youth Roundtable. We are always glad to have you watching and tuning in each single week to listen to us and watch the discussion that these young people will bring to you, have to put across. So this week's discussion is one that we've really had for a long time, but one that just can't go away. We want again to go back and look at the civic space. There's a lot that has happened in this country since the last time we discussed that topic, and we want to bring it in light with the current events happening, and also to project and foresee into the future, 2022, what the young people should expect. So our discussion for today is the youth and civic space in 2022. The youth and civic space in 2022. So I have with me a panel of ladies and gentlemen. There are three for now, but a second lady will join us to make it four, and that will be in the second segment. So I will not waste more time. Let me just get these that are here now introduce themselves so that we can have the discussion getting underway. Let's begin with the lady next to me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aima Patricia Okou. I'm a member of the network for the public interest lawyers, Makerere. Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Mulindwa Walid Lubega, the National Youth League chairperson of the Forum for Democratic Change Party.
Yes, thank you very much. To our viewers, good afternoon. My name is Kidega Moses. I am the Secretary for Labour and Works of the National Youth Council of Uganda. I am also a proud member of the Revolutionary National Resistance Movement. I am a resident panelist on the Youth Roundtable, and I'm happy to be here once again.
Okay, so that's the team that we assembled for today's discussion, and we hope that to be as engaging, if not better than the ones that we've had before. So let's delve directly into this discussion, and I'm going to begin with Patricia. Patricia, what do you understand by civic space? When they say, when they talk of civic space as a young person, how important is it to you? Is it something that you get concerned about? Is it something you just see and say, oh, it is something over there, maybe someday I'll benefit from it, but I currently don't, or something of the sort?
Well, thank you, Godwin. What I understand about the civic space is that it's an organization, a group of people that come together to form various organizations towards a certain goal, aiming towards a certain goal, depending on what they intend to achieve.
Okay.
Yes.
So in the aspect of freedoms like expression, freedoms like assembly, freedoms like engagement, how would you relate those to your everyday life? How important or how viable are they for your day-to-day living as a young person in Uganda?
The civic space.
Yes.
The civic space is important in that aspect because they are always the members of these organizations always advocate for the freedoms of expression and all the other freedoms you had listed earlier. They provide a safe space for the youth, since the youth is what we're talking about. The youth to come together and air out their views without having so much fear of what society perceives. For instance, let's say security forces arresting people and all that. At least you know in your civic space you can always come in and air out your views freely.
Okay, let's move to Walid. You actively engage in civic work. You actively engage in opposing the regime. You actively engage in talking. You actively engage in a lot of stuff out there. What does this mean to you? What does civic space mean to you? What does it mean to you if you can speak or you can't speak, if you can write or you can't write, if you can assemble or you can't assemble, and all the other things that pertain to it? What does it mean to you, and what does it mean to the FDC Youth League?
To begin with, I would like, on my own behalf and on behalf of the Forum for Democratic Change, National Youth League, appreciate Center for Constitutional Governance for offering us this platform where we can assemble and discuss in a country where the civic space is now shrinking. And to go straight to the question you have raised, it should be noted that Uganda, we are a legal regime. So a legal regime spelled out clearly. We have a full chapter 4, a Bill of Rights, which details in detail all the right to life, right to education, freedom of speech. So it guarantees even the freedom after speech. So our concern as the FDC is that we must practice it to the dot. So where we see loopholes, it's where we are concerned, and we must come out vehemently to give a direction that really we are going back to the Obote era where Mr. Museveni went to the bush. When he went to the bush, part of the reasons he gave to justify his going to the bush was that the regime by then had veered off the track, the constitutional track. So he wanted to restore a constitutional order. We are concerned that the very justification he gave when he was going to the bush is the very justification we are now putting to him, that he has really gone off the track. He has veered off the terrain. We no longer have the constitutional order in place. It is leadership under directives, presidential directives and whims of the leader who holds the power. So we want to restore the constitutional order as FDC.
Okay. Kidega, do you agree with what he's saying? Do you think that there's need to restore the constitutional order, there's need to safeguard the civic space, or you think it's not as bad, or it's not even bad at all?
Thank you very much, Comrade Godwin Toko. To me, the civic space entirely is a core and fundamental principle of good governance and of good democracies. And like Kenneth Waltz will tell you that democracy isn't about only electocracy. It isn't only about going to elections every maybe 5 or 7 years or 2 years, whatever time period it is, but it's about the respect for human rights, the respect for rule of law, people having the freedom to press and freedom to organize, principles of accountability, amongst other things. So the civic space is very important because it enables us as a society shape these very good principles of democracy, principles of accountability, among other things. But also we must appreciate that there is no perfect democracy in the world. Democracies have challenges, and even the USA, that to many of us is seen as a beacon of democracy, has its own challenges. We saw Trump, who was an incumbent president, going to court and saying that he was rigged out of an election. So there is no perfect democracy all over. And Uganda has had its fair share of challenges in terms of building a democracy. And of course, we have posed the question to ourselves whether our country is a liberal versus an illiberal democracy. And I think every stakeholder, the citizens, the state, the people, civil society, the fourth estate, all of us must collectively work towards building a liberal democracy, where there is freedom to speak and freedom to say whatever you feel should be said, and the freedom to own the right to self-determination. Because we all have read about the negative effects of illiberal democracies, like we saw in the mid-1950s in Egypt, where the monarchy government of Egypt closed down on the civic space. What then happened is that the Egyptians began to organize in mosques because the space outside the mosques was closed. They were not allowed to hold political gatherings, not allowed to freely express themselves. So they now found solace in mosques, and that led to the Muslim Brotherhood, that was a revolutionary and solidarity movement that eventually overthrew the regime of the monarchy. So in a nutshell, civic space is very important because it shapes our democracy as a country, but above all, it offers checks and balances to the government. So any country that aspires to be democratic should aspire to have a strong civic space. But also, my comrade has made so many allegations that to me I think are not very fair. Because for a country like Uganda that has had, and this is embedded in our constitution, in the preamble, we recognize our history that has been filled with turmoil and turbulent, history. But eventually we are getting to a path. Of course, we have setbacks here and there. I'm not saying we are perfect, but we have made strides as a country in terms of, democracy and civic spaces.
You bring in the very interesting aspect of the constitution. Is there one thing you can mention that we've learned from that history that we can't repeat? Like, in the past, the leaders did A, B, C, D, All the people of Uganda did ABCD. Now we've learned we can never do that again because it was bad.
Yeah, certainly, by all means, yes. And that is why the party that I subscribe to, one of its core principles is nationalism. That in the past, one of the core factors that divided Ugandans were the civil wars. That I am a Muganda, you're an Acholi, so we fight on that premise.
There's never been a civil war that came in Uganda.
Oh, come on.
Which one?
Where is your history?
Which one?
When the Banyoro were fighting with their neighbors, when the Langis and Acholis were fighting between themselves,
I mean,
those were civil wars.
Unless you're talking of small tribal disagreements, those
Yes.
happen everywhere. They're not necessarily civil wars.
Okay.
Unless you're saying that
like
before colonialists came, the Baganda and the Banyori were fighting. That is true. We can call that a civil war.
Anyhow, the point is that before our party, eventually took over leadership of this country,
Tribes were fighting.
tribes had so many. The line between tribes was very deep,
So now,
and that is why the core principle of our party, one of them is nationalism.
and
That we must see ourselves
let me
as Ugandans.
let me just bring in this, so that our viewers are really better informed. There are parallel conflict pits the Madi and their Choli neighbors. It has happened. Well, the NRM is
It's
in
not a civil war, tribal clashes.
That's why I'm calling them tribal clashes. It happened while the NRM was in government. So is it that people are not learning as fast as you would want them to learn, or is it that you are equally failing like those that came before?
I think we can choose to look at it from so many points of view. But to me, I think Ugandans have embraced the need for us to be one nation. Okay? When you look at the history of the Cold War, for example, one of the reasons as to why the nuclear war did not happen is because the people of Western Europe had learned from their lessons of the World War. That is why even when they had capacity to develop all these sophisticated nuclear weapons, there was deterrence. JF Kennedy was deterrent towards using these nuclear weapons because they had learned from the history of the World War and the effects it had caused on them. So in the same regard, I think Ugandans have learned, have taken their lessons from their history, and I think we are doing better than we were 20, 30 years ago. Of course, there's still so much to be done, but we're on the right path.
What did you agree? With regard to the civic space, have we learned enough from the past? Have we learned enough from how people were restricted in terms of speech, in terms of political opinion, in terms of organization? Have we learned that that is bad, and now we agree that, oh, let's do things differently as a country?
Thank you very much. First of all, Ugandans attempted to do that, to correct that in the constitution he has talked about, the 1995 constitution. I agree with him, the preamble, and even what is embedded into the constitution. It was meant to cure the worthwhile past of Uganda. But it should go into the annals of history that the Museveni regime has been the worst in terms of human rights violation, in terms of protection of the constitution, the sanctity of the constitution. And if you compare Mr. Museveni to the colonialists will be saints. Museveni is worse than the colonialists.
Why would he make that's a very strong statement.
He's worse than the colonialists.
Okay, what makes him
to
worse?
Justify that, when he was coming to power in 1986, he promised to end the extrajudicial killing. We saw what happened in Kasese. In Kasese, where it was like a cleansing. They went and killed on sight. We have never had an explanation why the people of Kasese were killed en masse, and mass graves were there. We saw what happened in Mukula, so Balacheke, and so on. So all people were cleared in a daylight. So we don't know whether what Museveni did in Kasese and his the commander came chest thumping that we have killed them, whether that is what NRM took NRM to the jungles in Iwelo to end the extrajudicial killing, while they went and even did worse than even the Obote, than even the colonialists. Because even during the colonialists, I've never heard of any scenario where colonialists came and committed those extrajudicial killings on the Ugandans, on the blacks. But Museveni did it. Another incident is detention without trial. We have seen people, many people have been detained, they are languishing in jail, they have never been presented to court. Even those who have been presented to court, like our colleague Kakwenza, Lukira Bashaija, the court ruled that he must be released without any condition. Up to now, the junta of Mr. Museveni has really defied the orders of the court. She's now behind the bars. I saw the wife. So I wonder whether this is what actually took Museveni to the bush, ending detention without trial, the detention without trial order of Obote. Another incident is invading parliament. Our history is punctuated with worst events of the 1967 Pigeon Hall Constitution, where the army went. Actually, it surrounded the parliament, and MPs passed the constitution without debating it. But the army was ostensibly to scare parliamentarians of the day. Today, in 2017, we saw a worst case scenario than that of the 1967. Because as of the 1967, the Obote, army surrounded the vicinity of parliament. Then the 2017 of Museveni, army entered parliament, entered the chambers, beat members of parliament to the extent of breaking MPs' backs. We saw many parliamentarians who were hospitalized after the incident. We are lucky that no MP died, but they were beaten to near death. So we saw what happened. So we have never seen whether parliament has a role to play in as far as, the army has a role to play in entering the chambers, the sanctuary of justice, the chambers of parliament, forcing members of parliament.
Just to bring the discussion back to, do we know that these were army members, or are you speculating?
No. These were strangers. Strangers. They were not MPs representing army.
So they couldn't.
They were strangers.
What I'm saying is, don't say that we have never seen the army enter parliament if we don't know whether they were army.
No, the strangers. There is no way strangers can invade the parliament, beat up MPs. It is not there in the parliamentary system.
Okay, now how do we relate that to the civic space?
To the civic space, parliament should the parliament we have by law and practice should be exercising independently. Independent parliament sitting to decide on any legislation without any undue influence. But in this instance, parliament came, beat up MPs to force them to pass the age limit because it was in favor of Mr. Museveni.
Okay.
So Aima never wanted MPs, especially those of opposition, to delay the proceedings of parliament. So we now question whether Mr. Museveni learned from the past, whether Mr. Museveni saw whatever the worst while pass and really had to, as the preamble suggests, or he's actually doing the worst.
Okay, let's first pause it there. Let's move back to Patricia. Patricia, you just left the university recently.
Yes.
When you were at the university, do you feel like people at the university, students, can freely engage, that they can freely speak, that they can freely organize? Or because the university generally is known as a place of marketplace for ideas, that if you think there is no God, you can also say it at the university. If you think the government is misleading the poor, that's the place for you to say it. So do you feel like that was the case for the time you were at the university, or do you feel like the space is not the same anymore, that for some reason or another, that is not being respected?
Thank you, Godwin. I think while at the university, to a certain extent, you could express yourself, while to the other extent, you could not. We had the instance when they were amending the constitution, and the army came to campus, and while students were striking, beat up students, all that happened. That doesn't show that you can freely express yourself with regard to certain issues. However, to another extent, students can freely engage with each other. It's just that following the recent activities, looking at the Kakwenza case and the other previous activities that happened, that include drones picking up people from their homes, from the roadside, all that, it creates an environment characterized by fear, where people are, what's the word, cautious about whatever they say. You have to filter whatever you say for fear of arrests or whatever
Annoying the wrong
violence
people.
will come when you're picked up by the drone.
Okay, let's move back to Mr. Kidega. You've mentioned the Egyptian revolution and said when you shrink out civic space, the effect is that people are going to get annoyed, people are going to get enraged, and they'll work against the government. If you met the president of Uganda with the current status of things in Uganda, we know of writers who have been arrested. We know that each time the opposition calls for a political rally, it's almost broken up with a lot of force. The other day we saw a group of women taking a petition to the Human Rights Commission, and they were brutally arrested, including with their babies. If you met the president today, bearing the hindsight that you have about Egypt, what would you tell him about the civic space in this country? What would you tell him about the criticism? Like, how best can you say that? What would be advice to him on how best he should handle it?
Yes, thank you very much, comrade moderator. Just before I come to that, let me speak shortly about human rights in general. We all know by now that in 1948, the United States of America's Secretary of State, George Marshall, officially opened up the United Nations General Assembly that sat in Paris, France. This sitting sat and eventually approved the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And the idea was that any nation or any government that has no respect for the rights of its own people will definitely have no respect for the sovereignty and rights of its neighboring nations or of other nations. So it was important to embed these good values of human rights amongst all nations. But this approval was a mere statement. It was not a treaty. And that is why we saw about 8 countries did not approve. You know, we saw Poland, Ukraine, the Soviet Union, they did not approve of that declaration. So there was no legal obligation to it. But Uganda as a country has gone ahead to approve or ratify so many of these international conventions on human rights. And the first that we did ratify was in 1985 when we ratified the International Convention that deals away with discrimination of women. You know, in 1995 still we went ahead to ratify the International Convention that gives space for civil and political rights. So I think as a country, we have made strategic progress towards building a democracy, towards building a society that has respect for human rights and values. My advice, if I met the president, would definitely be that we began off well as a party. We came in with a clear 10 points agenda program. We gave Ugandans a new constitution that themselves, through a referendum, constituted. We came in with very good principles. There was no corruption. The country was on the right trajectory. And if you get the chance to speak to people like Godwin Toko, he will tell you that in the early years of the NRM, he was a vehement supporter of President Museveni because we were on a clear path of socio-economic transformation and putting the country towards a very good trajectory. So my advice, if I met him, was that whereas we seem to have made a couple of mistakes along the way, can we get back to the drawing board and say, we had a clear 10 points program? Can these be the principles that will guide us moving forward?
What in your own view are those main mistakes?
Of course,
the couple of the mistakes, the main ones.
Issues like corruption. Okay, corruption, I will not hide about it. It has eaten up our country, and we must deal with it decisively. You know, issues like the high-handedness of security operatives at times. They get overzealous and they're at times high-handed. You know, such pocket cases, the discipline of the UPDF that they came with, we must restore that discipline. Okay, so there are certain, of course, challenges that any political party or any institution will face along the way. It is there are simply challenges of work. Okay, even here at CCG, I'm sure there are challenges that you have internally. So my advice would be to the part that let's go back to the 10 points program that we came with. We have made some mistakes here and there, but it is not yet, too late for us to rectify our mistakes. And Ugandans have demonstrated their faith in us. That is why each time we go to seek their mandate, they restore our mandate. So if we had made
that could be another topic for discussion.
If we had made grave mistakes, Ugandans would not be renewing our mandate. But the mere fact that they renew our mandate, it is an approval that, okay, yes, there are some mistakes here and there, but we still believe that your vision is good and you can continue to lead this country.
Yeah.
Would you say the same about Obote in 1980? That he made mistakes, but he won the elections. The elections were there. People renewed their mandate in him and said, oh, you're still our man, let's put you back in power.
Well, and you see, the same people rose up against President Obote.
Which people?
The NRM led a protracted people's struggle. It
wasn't
was a people's struggle.
It wasn't a people's struggle.
If it didn't have the support of the people, there is no way they could have
Kidega,
managed.
we're not going to paint a cat like a leopard and say this is a leopard. Otherwise, you're going to be dishonest to ourselves. A people-led revolution is different from what the NRM did. It had a couple of men, who, well, maybe they had support of people in a small particular area, and they overthrew the government. That's very different from a people-led revolution. Because if people-led revolution maybe would be like what you saw in Egypt, you understand? That all the poor rise up from all the corners of the country against the government and they overthrow it. Because that would then show that people were actually all dissatisfied with the government. But what you're seeing here is that a small group led overthrew the government. Now, when you relate that to what the NRM does today is that you can't win elections, the people who complain, the fact that no group has been able to lodge a war and remove the NRM does not mean that people are entirely satisfied. Doesn't mean that NRM is different from Obote. It could perhaps say that maybe they are the same, but there's a difference. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, you see, Toko, there are so many ways to express dissatisfaction. Going to the bush was a means that was used by then, not only in Uganda, but across.
Yes, that's true.
Even across Western Europe, each time the Soviet Union would have issues with the USA, they would launch wars.
Yes, that's true.
Amongst themselves.
But
these days, there are diplomatic ties. Okay? And you'll read the history of the hotline. The hotline was introduced to effectively have communication between leaders of the Soviet Union and that of the USA. Okay? So much has changed. The communication age, the information era. So the means of expressing dissatisfaction cannot be the same like they were. But people still express that dissatisfaction.
If the NRM was government in 1980 and there were coups and people going to the bush all over, don't you think people would have gone to the bush because of what they see today?
Like I've told you earlier on, Toko, that we have made mistakes along the way. I am not saying that we have been a perfect regime. No, we have made mistakes along the way.
That's honest.
But there is an opportunity for us to rectify our mistakes and get back and renew the faith of the Ugandans who had lost faith in our government. Majority still believe that we're on the right path.
Okay.
That is why they continue to renew our mandate. But those who have lost faith, we have an opportunity by rectifying our mistakes to bring them back on board.
So do you believe that will ever be a case that NRM will rectify it and people will say, oh, the NRM has changed, there is less corruption, the police is less brutal, the army is less brutal, they respect rights? Do you ever see that coming? Because what has been obvious is that it seems to get worse with every passing year. It seems like what the kind of operation that was there in 2005 is not the kind of operation that is there today. It seems like as the years go by, are you not worried that maybe in 2026 could even be worse than it is now? That you're getting to a point of no return. You almost get to the point where it becomes hard to redeem yourself and you just give up.
Well, the beauty is that the NRM now has a generation of leaders like myself, leaders who have respect for human rights, leaders who know what civic space means, leaders who know what democracy means for any society, and we are the generation of now. So I believe that not all hopes is lost.
So what are you guys doing right now to ensure that is restored?
Of course, constant conversations, constant checks and balances, constant reminding of our leaderships that we began well and we need to go back to how we began.
Okay. Yeah. Walid, do you believe that the NRM can ever change? In fact, me, I don't want to make an issue of the NRM. I've also seen people beating up thieves and killing them. That is abuse of their rights. Sometimes the NRM is not even there. I have seen people who say want to talk about religious leaders getting beaten at church. Not by the NRM, but by churchgoers. That means that there's a problem perhaps in our society where we don't respect rights a lot. Yeah. So if you make it about the NRM, we end up missing the big picture. Now, do you think we can ever change as a society and begin respecting people's opinions and saying, oh, he says there's no God, I say there's a God, we're all okay. Yeah, say there's no God, that's okay. I'll say there's a God, that's okay. And then you also get to a point where you said, oh, he's a thief, but okay, let's respect him, let's take him to the police station and not kill him. Yeah, and things of that sort. Or we are just a group of people that no longer respect human rights for one reason or another.
So what we are seeing is just pillars from above. So, and that is the degeneration. That's how we have degenerated. My thinking, the experience we have, all of us, we are students of Mr. Museveni, the politics of Mr. Museveni. And from the experience, there is a, we see, because my brother is here, Mr. Kidega is optimistic that there is room for improvement. For the last 35 years, we have never seen improvement. The improvement, the people who went to the Constituent Assembly and made the constitution we have, had good feelings and intentions for the country. They wanted to cure that. Mr. Museveni has proved that what he wanted to cure is just a mere whatever in a book, in a literature form. For me, I have my own constitution, my own system, the way I do things. It has generated to even his trusted lieutenants. We saw last time in the NRM primaries, the Honorable Rukutana saying that if you are not convinced, he was telling the supporters of his political nemesis, the Honorable Naomi Kabashari, you can petition God. You can go even if you call Pope. You can, but you can. The least you can do is call God. Nothing will happen. So that kind of impunity. We saw the Honorable, the Minister for Security, Jim Mwezi, asking, getting the guts to ask Justice Katusi, where were you when we were fighting? You were sleeping under your beds. You see, he was before court over the Gavi funds, misuse, abuse, and corruption and so on related issues. So he had the guts to tell the judge, where were you when we were fighting? For you were under the bed. So that kind of impunity.
But Walid,
yes,
Kidega just told us that that is the generation that they have also given
up.
They are waiting for their own turn.
Good.
When they get in charge,
we have the I can go to the generation of Kidega. We saw the Honorable Banita saying, we have the Maje. We have the Maje.
Is Anita part of your generation?
He is. Anita is the generation. Moz is the generation of Kidega.
No,
Moses said, no, that is the generation. No, that is the generation. That is the generation. Whatever.
25 years old.
Whatever, that is the generation.
How old is
the generation?
She's about
no.
40s.
The generation, Mozi, we saw him how he was chest thumping, that he has, Kakwenza must pay the price.
Was that a factory?
Yeah? No, it was. It was. And what is happening? If it was fake, what is happening to Kakwenza? He's paying. We saw even the wife saying that his balls were squeezed. So that is the generation of the Kidegas who wants to correct the constitutional order and take Uganda to normalcy. So they have inherited the DNA, the fake DNA of Mr. Museveni, which is, yes, they have inherited it and they are really entrenching it within their generation. So really, I don't see any lesson learned. I don't see any room for improvement based on the worst case scenario. I'm seeing a worst case scenario. The situation is becoming worse than even than before. Yes, so, because even the rigging is talking about, if you compare the rigging of Obote in 1980, Museveni is becoming more sophisticated with the computer generation. Museveni is now a computer-generated president.
Now, if you bring in the aspect of the society, I also ask, sometimes we're hard on the NRM people. Yeah, they're not in the mosques when we are fighting because someone has said something about Allah that we disagree with, or in the churches, or even in the universities. I've seen people fighting at universities. It has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with the narrative.
Social media.
Yes, on social media. People abusing themselves. Yeah, over something very basic. Team Bujingo, Team Who, and all those. Are we just a society that cannot respect rights? Are we just a group that cannot respect and say, he has a different view. Mine is 100% different, 360-degree different. But that's his view, and this is my view. Let me respect his view.
It takes me back to the preamble I gave. The preamble was envisaged within the Chiganda saying that the fish rot from the head. So the
society is rotten.
Has degenerated from the head, who is the headmaster, Mr. Museveni, up to the grassroots
of the society.
So you saw Mr. Museveni, the head of state, the fountain of honor, having the audacity to call former head of state, the slain president, the General Idi Amin, calling him swine. Calling him swine. And you see Kakwenza talking the same language like his grandfather, Mr. Museveni. And now the son, Muhoozi, wants to correct. You see? That is the society. That is the society we are in. So Museveni has really
before you continue,
Museveni has crafted the society, the worst society we are in, and now we are all inheriting. We are entrenching that bad society.
Walid, you're a member of the FDC.
Yes.
The FDC can actually become a party that leads this government, say, in the future, maybe 2026. Aren't you worried of the people you're going to lead? Is it worth it that you struggle, you say this, then you're going to lead a group who don't even believe in human rights because they learned so much from Museveni? Yeah, and I don't know why you're not going to blame Museveni for not spoiling the likes of Besigye or Mugisha Muntu. Yeah, they were FDC leaders, but they seem not spoiled. So why is that Museveni is spoiling the rest of us, but not spoiling leaders within your party? That is one. And then two, what does this mean for FDC? What does this mean for opposition parties? That if you got power today and you have to lead people who have been spoiled, who have grown up listening to this kind of rhetoric, doesn't that affect your chances of leading a people that are more conscious and better to lead?
Well, first of all, Museveni didn't spoil the Dr. Besigye's, the General Muntu and the likes, because those people really they left Museveni, having seen that Museveni is a spoiler. So they left him. And the generation that the FDC is looking to salvage, yes, it is very true. It comes from goodwill of the leaders. The FDC will have goodwill to correct, to bring sanity in the, and also the to clamor for the political hygiene of our country. We believe that we can rearrange, we can correct the mess that the Museveni administration has brought in place. We have the zeal, we have the capacity, we have the tenacity to sort the mess that is before us. But we believe that the NRM is beyond redemption. It can never do anything better to the situation other than aggravating the already worse situation. So the FDC as an institution, as an establishment, as a government in waiting, we believe we have the capacity. We believe we have the system. First of all, we are going to put in place systems to put in place things in order. What is lacking in our country is the system. The country is run on an individual, Mr. Museveni, on the whims of the individual. The FDC believes in a system theory where things are within the tenets of how they must, the systems, the drawn-up systems. So we believe in it.
Isn't that what Mugisha Muntu was saying FDC should have, and then he fell out of? Because he was saying, let's have structures. The structures are there. I'm part of the structure. Because FDC then eventually chased being people. A national youth leader, I'm part of the structure. I represent here the structure, the whole structure of the youth. So that is really political. But I know General Muntu believes in systems. When he was in the presidency of the FDC, that's why you he was part of the system, and he championed the system, and I believe the party he left also believes in the system. Okay, that has been a good discussion. Let's have a break. We shall come back and continue this discussion. We shall bring in the case of Kakwenza, a very, very interesting and rather absurd case for Mr. Kakwenza, getting arrested for what he tweeted. Want to, in the second segment, look at, is it allowed to tweet the kind of language he tweeted? Is it also allowed to treat him the way he was treated or is being treated after those tweets? But that is in the second segment. And in the second segment, shall be joined by the fourth panelist to make it four. The second lady will be joining us. So let's have a quick break and then we'll come back to the discussion. Welcome back, our dear viewers. This is the second and final edition of today's discussion. We hope that the first edition was very engaging and that you learned a thing or two from that. The team of young ladies now and gentlemen settled here that splitting the matter, having this discussion on the civic space, the youth, and 2022. It's just the second discussion this year, and we hope that we shall have very, very engaging discussions throughout this year. And we hope that you always tune in, listen to them, turn on notification, and get notified whenever these videos are put up. Now, for the second edition, we've been joined by the final panelist that I talked of earlier, who wasn't able to start with us because of the mobility challenges that we all know well of in this country and town. So I'm going to ask that she begins by introducing herself before we proceed.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Ruth Chitamirike. I am a student of law at Makerere University, where I also serve as the Minister for Gender in the university. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Others that introduced themselves, so there's no need going back to them. Let me ask Patricia.
Yeah.
When you heard that Kakwenza was being arrested, had you known him before?
No.
You
Truthfully, I had not known him before.
You hadn't known him before?
Yes.
So when you heard that someone is being arrested, when did you get to know Kakwenza?
I got to know when a screenshot of his utterances was shared.
At what point was it shared? After the arrest or before the arrest?
Prior.
Prior to the arrest?
Prior to the arrest. I saw the screenshot, so I went and checked the page. And guess what? We find comments like, do you know that drone is coming? To what color of drone do you want to find you? Like, people know what is yet to happen. You get?
Okay.
Yes.
So, do you think from the comments you read, I mean, not from the comments you read, from the screenshot and from the posts that you eventually, the tweets that you went and saw, do you think the language you used was fair? Are they justifiable, for instance, say in law or according to our society and our norms, as some people have argued, should they be justified?
According to our societal norms, on an ordinary day-to-day basis, if someone spoke to you in that manner, definitely you'd get angry. Though I feel like since we are going into a public space, you have to limit the kind of language you can use. You can always find a better way of portraying what you want to be portrayed.
Okay.
Yes.
Walid, do you have a similar view? Do you think the language was too strong? Would you use the same kind of language to refer to, say, a general in the UPDF or a head of state?
Thank you very much. The FDC, we are deeply concerned with the arrest of the colleague.
Is he a member of the FDC?
Yes, he's a member of the FDC Youth League.
He's the structures?
Member. He's a card-holding member
of the Youth League?
Of the party. And he qualifies to be a member of the league. He's a youth, so he's a member of the league.
Okay.
And we are concerned, first of all, on my own behalf and on behalf of the leadership that I lead of the Youth League, that our member is still detained, even when the court granted him bail and conditional release. We are concerned of the shrinking civic space. Commenting on the language, some people have called it unpalatable, but on a day-to-day situation, as my sisters termed it, I think the language is okay. Because going back to my background, where we started from. I told you that the president, in the Chiganda language, we have a saying that the fish rot from the head. So the president started this when he called the former President Idi Amin Dada, may his soul rest in eternal peace. When he called him swine, so he actually brought in the narrative.
That's quite problematic. Is the FDC Youth League also learning bad things from President Museveni?
We are.
You're learning the bad things from Museveni?
We are students. Actually, we are students of Mr. Museveni.
So you're using another wrong.
We are students. Yes.
You're using a wrong to correct a wrong.
Yes. That should be. We are students of Mr. Museveni. So it is Mr. Museveni who started the music. Let Mr. Museveni and his adherents face the music, enjoy it, and because they laid the bed, let them sleep in the bed. They laid. So I saw nothing much. I didn't see anything wrong with the writing of Mr. Kakwenza. If I was General Muhoozi, I could actually go through what he wrote and reflect whether what he wrote meant what is exactly actually what is happening. So, but we saw the person who wants to be the head of state using excessive force. I don't know whether he's going to kill the entire country, because if you're a leader, people will speak and you have no control of what people speak about you. So Mr. Muhoozi, he must control his temperament. So really, in my own thinking, Mr. Kakwenza used the very language that Mr. Museveni actually started. So let them enjoy the
So
the music.
if Mr. Kakwenza picked up guns and shot people dead, would you say, oh, Museveni's army have used guns and shot people dead?
No, that is different.
How different?
No.
Because we are talking about civic space. In civic space, there is no use of guns. Yes, we don't entertain that. In a civic space, ours is about the use of the language, the thought, the freedom to think.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's just cut it there. Let's just go to.
So it is a different case.
Okay.
I don't want you to equate it to what Kakwenza wrote.
Okay. Let's
Yeah.
move to the next panelist. And what do you make of Kakwenza Street? Do you think it's within what is justifiable, or you think he went overboard and, for that matter, had to be punished for his tweet?
Thank you so much. Unlike my brother Walid, who says, as the FDC Youth League, these are things that have been learnt from the head of state, so it is okay if we retaliate with the same language someone has taught us. When you look at the laws that govern this country, we have what you call the freedom of expression. So one would say Kakwenza is under his constitutional mandate to exercise a freedom to express himself. But when you deeply look at the freedom of expression, you are as free as you may be to express yourself, for as long as it does not infringe upon other people's rights. So when you look at the language, whereas it was okay for him to express himself, the language and the wording that is used may be, according to them, is somehow infringing on the rights of maybe other people. I feel at this time the discussion shouldn't be on whether Kakwenza said the right thing or the wrong thing, because that is up to them to decide. In as much as we acknowledge the existence of things such as the public court, where we can air out our opinions and views on certain things. But I feel even when he did whatever he did, right now as a person, he has his other rights that are being infringed upon.
We are going to talk about those rights.
Yeah. So when it gets to that, I feel yes, he has the freedom to express himself, but when you look at the tweet that Kakwenza makes, it has other rights in there that are being infringed upon. And
like which particular rights are those? It's basically saying, oh, there's a man here. This man looks fat. This man has hips. This man has breasts. So what would be wrong in that tweet?
When you say the man looks fat, Kakwenza is a writer. He's a novelist, and I've interacted with one of his novels. The the Greedy. It's one of the most recent novels he made, and it was highly satirical.
Greedy Barbarian.
Yeah, the Greedy Barbarian. Yes. So we know the background from which Kakwenza comes. He's a writer. He is a satirical writer. So when a satirical writer puts out a message that looks like that would look innocent, we know the background from which such a person is writing. So we also have to evoke the very say elements of literature that we know him for using to interpret such a message. And if we are to evoke such elements of literature to interpret the message Kakwenza puts out on his Twitter handle, then we know that he's attacking a person or say someone in this country.
Kidega, just a minute. Let's first finish with Kidega. Kidega, you have you seen the tweets?
Yes, I have.
You've seen the tweets. Do you think those tweets are wrong?
Thank you, Comrade Godwin. From where I'm seated, I am hesitant to discuss the individual of Kakwenza.
No, we're discussing the tweets.
A second, please.
Yes.
I am hesitant to discuss the individual, but rather discuss the principles along which Kakwenza acted and along which we are seeing the state respond. We have all read about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We all know them. And we know that in our Constitution, we have a whole chapter set aside to promote and protect fundamental human rights. We all know those things. But like my comrade said, Article 43, I think, tells us that you can only exercise your rights to a given point, for as long as you don't infringe on the rights of others. For example, we have a right to maybe hold peaceful demonstrations. But if your peaceful demonstrations are going to come at the expense of a civilian who is selling their matoke, selling their tomatoes, then the state has to come in to regulate. So that as you're trying to espouse or demonstrate your rights, you don't infringe on the rights of others.
That's true.
So if you look at the language that Kakwenza used in his tweet, yes, you ask yourself, where is the decorum in this? You see, violence begets violence. Okay, if you expect to be violent in your communication and expect to be welcomed with roses, then it's a fallacy.
So you're brought in the aspect of rights.
So
just a minute. You're brought in the aspect of balancing rights, which is a very, very cardinal principle of the law. That you can only enjoy your freedoms and liberty to the extent that they don't infringe those of other people.
Yeah.
So, seeing Kakwenza's tweets, what particular rights would you say that he infringed these rights of the subjects that he mentioned in the tweets?
Well, we know about the Computer Misuse Act.
That's not a right. Okay, that's a different law. Yeah, that's
yes,
okay.
It's a law. It's a law. Okay, and human rights are part of our laws, and so is the Computer Misuse Act. So if you look at the communication in the tweet of Mr. Kakwenza, you ask yourself, where is the decorum in this? Where is the mutual respect for a senior military officer? Because you see, these are people who sacrifice a lot for our country. someone who puts aside his liberties and his peace and goes outside and lives in the war and lives in the coldness so that you can sleep peacefully in your house. We must accord them some level of respect. So to me,
is it that those tweets are wrong because there was a general mentioned? So they would be right if he had mentioned you.
No.
Because you're trying to make it look like it's about the generals.
It wouldn't be right even if it were against me. Okay? We all know that God made us in our respective ways and respective manners and gave us different features. Okay? I am a dark-skinned person. Okay? Do you think I would feel good if you came to me and said, Kidega, you're dark-skinned and you're all this? I would feel segregated. I would feel discriminated. Okay? And this goes back to the same discrimination that we saw that in South Africa, in America, where you are being discriminated because of how you look. Okay? So we shouldn't look at it just as a mere tweet, but the level of discrimination. So, okay? How should people who are obese now feel?
What the guy was saying is, please go to the gym. He said something like that, right? God, there's a solution to this. If you're dark-skinned, maybe there's no solution to that. I'm dark-skinned myself. Perhaps there's no solution to that. I will die with my skin color unless I choose to bleach, which I don't think I will do. But I think if someone says that, oh, you're obese, go to the gym.
No, but someone calling, because in his tweet there is one where he said that the social media NRM activists are marketing a dead cop. Okay, Really, where is the decorum in that?
Okay.
So
Now let me
you're
bring
calling
you back to
someone.
what
No,
Walid.
first hold up. No. You're calling someone a dead cop, and you expect them to, take you. I mean, give you roses.
Walid said.
So it's only fair that if you see violence begets violence.
That's true. You've said.
We can disagree, but let's have decorum.
That's
okay?
true. I agree.
You can put out your disagreement. You can advise person A, person B about how they appear, but in a respectful manner. Okay?
Now, Walid,
so
I want to bring you back to what Walid said. He said two things. He said, one, the president uses these terms that they've learned from the president. They're we young women and men of tomorrow have since learned that, Museveni uses these words, and that is okay. So they've picked from Museveni, and they're using them. So is that a failure of leadership on the part of people like President Museveni, who Museveni has, I don't want to repeat the things he has said, but there are quite several, that he has said about other people. He calls them all sorts of names.
Pigs.
Yeah. Is it that our leaders are failing us? Are they not having the decorum? Are you not asking too much to have decorum from Kakwenza, and yet you can't ask the same from Mr. Museveni?
You see, Comrade Toko, two wrongs don't make a right.
That's true.
Okay? If we are saying that person A did this and it's wrong, it shouldn't be a point of reference for us to do some other wrong thing.
That's true.
We must be able to set our own standards as a generation. So it is very wrong for us to learn the bad things from maybe a couple of our leaders and then make it feel like, okay, I can use this to my defense. No. Okay? So to me, I think that, and conclusively about this, is that I continue to place my faith in the judiciary because we have empowered them with whatever legal instruments they need to follow up on this matter. And I don't want to preempt their conclusion. I believe they're doing the investigations that they have to do. But also, I think that we must strengthen some of these institutions, like the Human Rights Commission. I think it's Article 51 that establishes the Human Rights Commission, and the subsequent articles empowers it with powers to even investigate and visit detainees and all these things. And that's why I said we must discuss the principles and not the individuals. Moving forward, how can we have a conversation around strengthening the institution of the Human Rights Commission? Okay, what is lacking therein? Okay, is there a need for a constitutional review so that we maybe amend how these commissioners are appointed? Okay, should there be more public involvement in establishing such commissions? That is the line of conversation we should be having. Okay, because discussing Kakwenza as an individual does not solve the issue.
We could have discussed Stella Nyanzi, we could have discussed Kabuleta. I mean, there have been a couple people arrested in similar manners. So if we're just using Kakwenza because it's the latest case, you understand? And he has brought in a lot of issues. The Human Rights Commission has been on the spot over the last few days because of how they've also handled the case. Yeah, that's why it's in law there is something called the locus classicus case. It has all the principles you want, so you just use it. That seems like this particular case. But thank you for that submission. Let me get back to Rita, who wanted to jump the gun. We shall get you after her. She wanted to jump the gun by talking about how the judiciary has not been respected, how Kakwenza's rights are being infringed. Now, that's the second aspect of this discussion. Yeah, we've seen murderers in this country arrested and taken to court. Yeah, murderers. Yeah, we've seen robbers who have robbed with guns and committed all sorts of capital offenses. The offense under the Computer Misuse Act, for which Kakwenza is being charged, is a minor offense. Yeah, in fact, for minor offenses of that kind, you don't even have 48 hours to take a suspect to court. Say it's 24 hours. Yeah, while the others are 48 hours, it's 24 hours. We see Kakwenza is arrested. He's kept held incommunicado for almost 2 weeks. Yeah, no one knows where he is. Then we hear that he has been taken. A search is being conducted at his home in Iganga. A court in Machindi says, release the man, and no one releases him. Days go by. Yesterday, another court order was issued, this time by the High Court, I think.
High Court.
Is it the Civil Division? Justice Musa Sekana saying, produce him in court, whether he be dead or he be alive. And then finally today we read a tweet that he was taken to court at Buganda Road and remanded to Chitalia. Now the circumstances of this case are very interesting. I don't want to discuss the individual, and like he's saying, and which I agree with 100%. But circumstances here that we are not respecting the very, very laws. How is it that the police is arresting someone for disregarding the law, and the police is disobeying the law? In the course of arresting him and also punishing him because he disobeyed the law. How will these wrongs eventually make it right?
I totally agree. It is so painful when you look at the circumstances around the arrest and detention of Kakwenza. Whereas maybe according to them, he may have done something wrong, but it is not a wrong unless court has ruled that it is a wrong. So it was really unfair when you look at the circumstances under which he was arrested. He goes missing for 2 weeks. First court, the magistrate court in Machindie releases a writ of habeas corpus. It's not done, and it's until yesterday when Justice Musa Sekana made the same that they had to release him today. So the disrespect for human rights in this nation is alarming. The rate at which rights are not respected is entirely alarming, that people are okay with taking someone away for 2 weeks because they made a tweet and no one is saying anything. Uganda Human Rights Commission has been disabled. Uganda Law Society is not saying anything. It is only few human rights defenders that look at it as a very big thing. So just as the first discussion was, and it's a system issue, and maybe we can try trusting the judiciary, as Kidega was saying. We hope it comes up with something that can work for all of us, with the inclusion of Walid. But I agree with you. It is very sad that we can have such things going on in our country and no one is concerned. No one does anything about it because no one cares.
Okay, Walid, the principles of governance are that in a democracy like ours, you have the 3 arms of government. Yeah. When I was at law school, our lecturer said it's like the old cooking style where our great grandparents used 3 stones, yeah, onto which they rested the saucepan. Yeah. If you took any one of those stones, the saucepan would not stand on the other 2. Yeah. And if you left only one working, it's even worse. You understand? But now we see this reputation, yeah, that the judiciary seems in a fix. We saw how Nicholas Opio was arrested and charged under a very, very grave offense. Yeah, he was charged with corruption, money laundering, and charged by the anti-corruption division of the High Court. And eventually the case is withdrawn. They're like, oh, we have, it's nothing. Yeah. We saw how Bobby Wine and his clique in Arua were arrested, taken to a court, charges read to them. You understand? They were remanded for treason, and the case died. We saw Kiza Besigye getting arrested and charged with rape. If you read the words of Justice Ogola in regard to that case, that charge against Besigye, you will see how much he was angry and what he said about the
rape
state.
in the temple of
yeah,
justice.
the rape in the temple of justice. We saw how they released people one time at the High Court, and the black mambas came and picked them. We saw how the courts keep releasing suspects, and the security parties come and pick them. Now, of course, security belongs to the executive arm of government. Yeah. So, what does this say about is the government, is the security, is the state now using the judiciary as an extension of its coercive arm to punish, to beat up, to infringe the rights of citizens in this country? Is that the reality we are living with today?
Thank you very much. Allow me to first of all respond to my sister and brother before I go to the substantive question you have asked. To my sister, she has pointed out a very pertinent issue about satirical writings of Kakwenza. But in the satirical writings, there is what they call poetic license. Poetic license allows or permits a writer to come up with a language that fits the message. So I don't see any problem with it. Actually, even if you go to the Computer Misuse Act you are talking about, he has actually cited the poetic license. And about the issue of learning from the president, I'm shocked that my brother has come up with a category, that there is a category of what the president say we should take, and there is a category of what the president say we shouldn't take. I don't know what, do you expect the head of state, the fountain of honor? Because for me, I expect him to be a policy person. Whatever he talks is policy. If he calls somebody swine, that's policy. And that we as Ugandans, we as students of his leadership, we must follow suit. So if you expect me to pick something and leave out something, then I think you have a very big task. So let the president admit that he really started this and he should actually end it. On the responding to the issue you talked about, what we are witnessing is an attack on the judiciary. The judiciary is under capture. Although the judiciary is used as a scapegoat, when they want to punish me because of the views that I have that are contrary to the regime, they take me to the claiming that they have arrested me. They are going to take me to court just to pass time. As they squeeze my balls, they do all the heinous things that I've ever done. The worst thing that even colonialists never did to our forefathers. That's why I said Museveni is worse than the colonialists. Museveni's administration, and I must repeat it in the camera. Museveni's administration is worse than the colonialists. So, in terms of human rights violation, because what we are talking about and the whole things you mentioned actually showcases that we really have a very big crisis before us, and it is actually generating time to time, from time to time. I don't know how much my brother will come and admit and say we are sorry for this, because every time if we are past this, then another new thing comes in. So in my own thinking, the judiciary is under capture. I don't know how many times the judiciary will come and say that we are now in charge, because the ruling that that was made in Makindye confirms that the judiciary, confirms the sense of the judiciary.
Well, that ruling confirms that the judiciary is neutral.
You know, the judiciary,
because I mean, there's a magistrate who knows that Kakwenza is held by the state, but she goes ahead and issues an order, says release him. Yeah. At that point, at least maybe she feels like, oh, I have the freedom to do this. The fact that they then don't respect the order is where now the challenge is, that perhaps now she will realize that, oh, I'm not as free as I thought before making that order. Yeah?
Yes. That's why it confirms that the judiciary is under capture. Because if it wasn't under capture, the ruling of the magistrate would be respected, and by now Kakwenza would be out.
Okay.
Even the one of Justice Second of the High Court, up to now it hasn't been honored, and it will never be honored. Yes, as we because what the person the person who feels he was offended, he wants to punish using the system that they have. And secondly, they have learned that impunity works. Impunity works. Just like I told you earlier, that a minister had the audacity to tell the justice of the High Court that where were you when we are fighting, we are fighting the jungle.
First hold it there, because
so this man, he has now the audacity to tell him that, you know what, my father is the president. You know what, I'm the commander of land force. I have to teach you a lesson that we are the one in charge.
Okay.
We have the Majay.
I'm going to ask
and we have to showcase you. So these people want to parade the Majay and to tell the, to give the to make an impression that Kakwenza feels that these people wield power.
Okay.
Yes.
So hold it there. Let me turn to Patricia here. The disrespect of the orders issued by the High Court. Yeah. The disrespect of the judiciary. The disregard. There was when I was at law school, there's a very interesting book I read by Professor Dr. Kabumba. It says that the president once said it is for the judges to wear their wigs and go and decide chicken theft cases. Yeah, like who has stolen the chicken? There's a song that says "Hunyami chicken" that I've been hearing on social media. So their role is to go and decide chicken theft. Yeah, like petty crimes. So it seems to suggest that when it comes to matters like of that nature, constitutional matters, very serious issues, it is no longer the judiciary. So what does this mean to the ordinary youths out there? What does it mean to someone who is growing in this country if they grew up in a country where the rule of law is not respected, where the judiciary can make one decision that it is empowered, clothed with the right cloth to do under the Constitution, and the executive says, well, what will you do? What does that mean to the young people in this country?
Thank you, Godwin. firstly, I wanted to respond to what you had said, but I think I'll do that later. What it means basically is that it's going to create an environment governed by so much fear, where everyone is going to be cautious about what they say, because they're so scared of what happens after expressing your freedom of speech. Everyone is going to be worried about the after effects.
Freedom after speech.
It's going to create that environment.
Okay.
Yes. Then going back to what Walid said, he defended Kakwenza on grounds that he's learning from
the head of state,
the president. But you are from a party that is called the Forum for Democratic Change. Do you think the members of the party should instead learn from the mistakes of their leaders and use that as a justification for whatever actions they do?
Yes.
It doesn't make sense that way. It doesn't make sense.
Just,
While what he said may have been said with a lot of venomous language, it doesn't create a ground to use the president himself as a ground for an excuse.
Just 1 second, Godwin. To me, listening to my brother Walid, it only shows me the ideological bankruptcy in my very good friend. But anyway, that we shall sort out another day. Let me speak about the conflict that really seems to be rising between maybe Kakwenza and General Muhoozi and things like that. I must say that conflict is a choice. We choose to make conflict. And on the aspect of choices and decision making, let me take you back to the nuclear war. In the Cuban Missile Crisis, JF Kennedy had a choice to make. And there were three choices or three decisions that he could have made. He could have chosen to shoot out, which was to bomb the missile settlements in the Soviet Union premises, or he could have chosen to squeeze out, which was to maybe block Cuba so that the Soviets don't plant their missiles. The third option which he used was to buy out. He gave the Soviets something, which was he removed the missiles that the USA had placed in Turkey and allowed peace to prevail.
Yes.
So conflict is a choice, okay? But even for us to make choices as either individuals or leaders, there's something called psychobiography, which is your psychodynamics, the environment through which you've gone, through your background, your social life, and things like that. So if you look at the decisions being made by so many of our young people, Kakwenza being one of them, they are influenced by so many things. Their psychobiography, the way in which they were brought up, okay? Many of us have grown up in the Museveni era, okay? And I agree that as a country, there is a sense of division among us. That much I agree. The socio-economic inequality that exists between the young and the old has somehow made the young feel like they are against the old. So at times when people like Kakwenza come out with too much anger and end up saying certain words that should not have been said, you can cut them some slack and say that the environment through which they have grown in, the socioeconomic depression that we go through as a people, the stress that the people are undergoing through, the financial depression and all these other things, at times force us to make some of these decisions.
Okay.
So to me, whereas I don't see decorum in his tweet, I also think that we can cut him some slack and say, okay, he's a young man who has made this mistake, and from a humane point of view, forgive him. But also that should not be a point of reference for us to continuously have disagreements without decorum. So I think, moving forward...
My problem is you're pushing the decorum to one side.
Moving
forward...
What about the
president?
What about the decorum? What about the president? Just a minute. Yeah. What about the decorum from the state that you're holding him longer than you should hold him? You're disrespecting the constitution. You're doing all these things. There are claims that he has been tortured. So why not have the decorum on both sides of the discussion?
Desmond Tutu just passed on, I think last week, but one. In one of his famous tweets, he said that do right where you are. Where you are, do right. Eventually, these so many rights will overwhelm the wrong. So don't focus on the wrong that these other guys are doing. You do right as an individual. You do right as Kakwenza. No. Wherever you are, if you're the state, if you're Kakwenza, if you're citizen, you do right.
That's okay.
Don't make your right or your decision to do right be influenced by the other party. You do right.
That's okay. That's okay.
Eventually, your right will overwhelm the wrong. So I don't just look at it from the point of view that because these guys are doing wrong, us we should do wrong. No, play your part as a citizen.
What I'm saying is that
play your part.
What I'm saying is that is okay. So the call should be to everybody. You
Yes.
understand?
Yes.
But you see, the state has a bigger duty. Yeah. When you study the law of defamation, when you study vicarious liability, when you're the bigger person, there's something called the deep pocket theory in law.
Yes.
When you're the bigger person, you have a higher responsibility
Yes.
to uphold the right
Yes.
than even the minor person. And in
Yes.
military psychology, I think they say when someone has an arrow, a bow and arrow, or a spear, and you have a gun, you're already better than them. Yeah, they can choose to misuse their spear, but if you misuse your gun, you're going to cause a bigger problem. You understand? So that's what we should also acknowledge.
Yes.
The state has made so many mistakes, and I don't know why they've made so many mistakes over what should have been a very minor case.
Yes.
Yeah. So now, unfortunately, our time is fast spent.
But Godwin, just 1 second. I am not saying that the state lives in isolation. No. In the first segment of our conversation, I said that one of the core aspects of liberal democracies is that every stakeholder must play their role.
Okay.
The citizens have a role to play. The state has a role to play. The civil society has a role to play. We all have a role to play towards building a liberal democracy.
Okay.
So from where you're seated, simply play your part. Do your part. If you're from the state, do good. Citizen, do good.
That's okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Now, our time is fast spent, and I've been reminded that we need to wind up. So I'm going to ask each of you to make their concluding remarks. Yeah, based on the discussion we've had, and if you have a message for the people out there, just make your conclusion. I'll give you a minute each, and I'll begin with Patricia.
Thank you, Godwin. My take on all this is that, while the justice sector has been disrespected by the security forces, and the security forces have failed to unconditionally release Kakwenza and all that, it has created an environment of caution and fear and loss of trust in both the security operatives and the justice sector. The people would probably feel that the justice sector doesn't have enough power to rectify the wrongs of other stakeholders. Yes. So from my take on all this, I think more has to be, the government has to play a bigger role, understand where they have gone wrong, and rectify these issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Walid, briefly.
Briefly, what took Museveni to the jungles of Luwero was detention without trial. What we are seeing before us is almost detention without trial. Our clarion call as FDC is to government that it should respect the verdict of the court. It should let court exercise its authority, and let the regime release Kakwenza as court ordered.
Okay.
Thank you so much. In conclusion, and what I would conclude with in as regards to this conversation of Kakwenza, the government's freedoms and rights. One, as young people, we have seen these things happen. We have seen that it is possible for you to be detained without you being tried, and even when there is a court that can say issue a writ of habeas corpus, no one is going to respect it. And you asked a question of what does this mean for us? I believe we have an opportunity as young people to actively engage in spaces such as these, say civic society, civic space, to come out and speak boldly on these things, because as we saw, not even Human Rights Commission is going to speak about these things, and yet they happen to us.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Comrade Godwin. My parting shots and concluding remarks will be anchored on principle. And the principle is that as a country, we have a constitution, we have a legal regime, and it is our responsibility as citizens, as the state, and as all stakeholders to uphold this very good document. The responsibility to meet your end of the bargain doesn't lie only on the hands of the state. Even you as a private citizen, are you following the constitution to the dot? Yes, you have rights, but do your rights infringe on the rights of others? Ask yourself those questions. Because I agree that eventually we all desire to live in a harmonious society where there is respect for one another, there is decorum, there is a sense of nationalism, there's a sense of love for one another, and we all see ourselves as one country, as one people, and we can collectively build our nation. Yeah.
Thank you. We shall hold it with that conclusion from you, Comrade Kidega. Thank you for the panelists. Thank you for turning up. Some of you, the invitations were really, really short notice because those we expected to have had earlier are disappointed. But I'm very grateful. I wish I could have a panel like this every other week. It's been very engaging. So to our dear audience and the viewers out there, we thank you very much that you always get time, create time and tune into this discussion. We look forward to making these discussions better, and you can give us your feedback in the comment section so that we can act upon them and make this your show by making it what you want it really to be. I hope that you have a good year. I hope that it has started so far well for you. And I hope that we'll meet again next week and have another discussion under a different topic with a different panel. Thank you very much.